I got to go to church this morning. And I got to come to this church this morning, and it's really quite lovely, I have to say. It was charming to sit back there and watch these amazing musicians and have a fabulous speaker. Guy Finley was here this morning and was quite amazing. How many of you were here at the early service? Remarkable man, isn't he? And how cool is that our vision is fulfilling itself? Because we have this partnership. Part of our intention for moving into our own place and having the space we have is that we could be not only a center for spiritual living that teaches science of mind, but that we could be a place in our community where like-minded individuals can come together to celebrate wisdom and insight. And today it was so wonderful to walk in and have this whole other community be here and be part of our community in celebration together. And I thought his message was brilliant. And my only critique of his message was that he gave it here, and now I can't steal all his material. So, so I have to file that away. So when I go someplace, I'll I got this great story I got to tell. It is the art of plagiarism. Really, is what my job comes down to. Multiple sources of wisdom and insight. So it was delightful to do that. And then I'm just kind of amazed. There's like 5 or 6 babies here today. I mean, babies. How cool is that? And there's like a bunch of teenagers here today. I know. We'll tell you more about them in a little bit. And so what I'm feeling and sensing is I need to go away more, No. Well, we'll talk about that. It's just so wonderful to feel what's happening here and who we're becoming and watching us step into our own larger vision of possibility. And I loved what Guy Finley said this morning about how we're always in this place of either dealing with the dragons that live down here or living in a higher state of consciousness. You see, the great wisdom through the ages, the great spiritual teachers throughout time have taught us that we are spirit beings. We are a part of this infinite life. We are a part of that infinite presence that is becoming itself. And yet, the illusion is that we think we are this body, that we inhabit this body and in the realm of form. And so when we live from the consciousness that thinks that we are, as Wayne Dyer said so beautifully, that we are human beings having an occasional spiritual experience, instead of recognizing that we are spiritual beings that have human experiences, when we think that we're occasionally going to have a spiritual experience, then it's that was like I was out of my body. I had this larger aha. And so when we come together in this recognition of the truth of who we are, we can draw from all sources of wisdom. All of the great masters through the ages have taught us some version of a greater possibility, of a greater reality. And so what happens too often is we begin to identify ourselves with that lower level self. We identify with the body, with the things of the world. And then when we do that, it's very easy to get into the contagion that happens that says more will be better. Right? Do you do this? I just, 2 weeks ago when Michael Gott was here, who, as you know, I adore, have for many, many years, I found myself in envy. I was having an iPad envy. I mean, this is a new one. I had the old envy for a long time, but the new, and he was doing his little message on this cool little iPad. And I was like, oh, I have to have one of those. I need to run right out and get one of those. How have I lived without an iPad all these years? Right? And then, and so we can get into that. And so our culture is so into this get more, have more, be more, mentality. And so what we would have you know is that there's a way of being in the world that recognizes your true source, that recognizes your identity, doesn't make the things of the world bad. You know, I think that one of the great misconceptions and misperceptions over the years in some forms of Christianity has been that somehow poverty is good. It's more spiritual to be poor. And I've been poor. And I tell you, there's nothing spiritual about it. I'm not spiritual at all when I'm poor, you know? But there is a spiritual wealth that comes from our non-attachment. So one of the things that I've discovered about myself, this is not news, but it's been such a lesson for me, is to learn that I am an introvert. And you all look at me and go, right. Because I happen to be in a very extroverted job. And so for an introvert, joy comes by being alone, by having time to go and center and be still and listen. So I took a retreat week, because here's one of my strategies for being an introvert. If I said I went on vacation, and you would ask me, well, who did you go with? I didn't get me. So if you say it's a retreat, then it's like, oh, okay, that's okay. Nothing wrong with that, right? But in this lesson for me, what I've realized is for 6 or 7 months, it's been a pretty intense pace. I don't know if you noticed, but we built a building and moved twice, moved a horse, had a wildfire. I tell people what has happened over the last, it's been a pretty intense period of time. And so I was feeling myself how shall we say this, less than gracious? Let's say that, yes. Just kind of edgy. Some might call it bitchy, but I'm going to call it edgy. And so what I know for me is like, okay, it's time to withdraw from the world. And so I took retreat, and I was struck by how magnificent this experience was, just for a short time. And it sort of helped recharge the battery. I got to go to St. George last week to visit our lovely friends down at the St. George Center for Spiritual Living. And Reverend Josie and their group had their dedication and installation ceremony last week, and it was just lovely. It was so fun because they've done a sort of a similar thing on a smaller scale, but they're moving into their own, like, we're a presence in the world. We make a difference. And they're creating all kinds of opportunities for those partnerships. They have a wonderful group called the Launching Pad, which is young adults creating their own ministry. Great musicians, by the way, remind me of that. Because I kind of steal wherever I go, It's like, hey, you should come visit us. And they're doing some wonderful work in the world. And so I got to spend Sunrise in Zion. And it was just like, my soul. And then as I progressed, then I went over to Santa Fe. And on the way, I had time, and I went to the Pueblo National Monument. In at least one lifetime, I know I was a Native American. I'm certain of that. And whether that's an imaginary thing or not, I don't care. It still feels that way. And I was struck. I had time, and I was like, oh, I'm right here. I'm going to go up to the monument. And so if you go, there's this beautiful cliff dwelling. If you take the time to get out of the car and walk about a mile down, you see this incredible cliff dwelling where the Anasazi built homes. And I was struck by the abundance. Now, when you drive through parts of the desert, when you go to Zion, where you go to some of these part of the countries that I just went through, to the naked eye, it would appear barren. It would appear like desert. But as I walked through the museum and looked at this incredible wealth that these people brought forth, by recognizing the abundance in which they lived, in the most basic of things, And so they were able and capable of taking everything that surrounded them and putting it into use, and creating medicines from the herbs, and creating cloth and and baskets from needles, and everything that was available was right there. And I thought about that, and I thought, what an abundant life. You see, our mentality so often is, if I have more stuff, I will be more abundant. But I would suggest to you, and I was just struck by this, that the truth is that when we have an abundance mentality, when we recognize our oneness with the divine, and we believe and live from that place of understanding that all that is needed is right now provided for my highest expression, then our eyes are opened to possibilities that we would not see otherwise. And so the greatest gift that we can give ourselves is to develop that sense and feeling of gratitude, that sense and feeling of knowing that we are one with a divine source, that we are one with a divine life, and that life knows from our very inception all that is necessary for our greater good and our highest self-expression. That it's all right here. And then, when we open to that awareness, to that understanding, then what is needed is provided. But if we are not aware of our source, if we're not in a state of grace and gratitude, then we move into that mentality of not enough. And you know what? The problem with that not enough mentality is there's never enough. You can have all kinds of good and still not feel blessed. So I always love this month where we get to celebrate and we're reminded to be grateful, to live in a state of graciousness, in a state of grace, in a state of recognition. The whole world clamors to us, and we do live in that time. Again, I'm not against materiality. I just feel like we need to recognize materiality has its limits, and that more does not necessarily provide a shift, but a shift creates the way for more to be revealed in our life. So I was struck by this incredible warmth and wealth and the whole Native American experience. These beautiful people that created amazing art, which was their life. There was the substance of their life. You got to fish, you got to hunt, you got to do all the things you need to sustain your body. But look how much time was then spent in creating not just a blanket, but a blanket of the most intricate and amazing design. Not just a way of being, but creating these beautiful flutes that sing to that part of our soul. And so I thought, we sometimes look with mistaken eyes at the world and say, look at what's missing. But the spiritually aware see and sense and know that there's always enough. And so I finally got myself to Santa Fe, and I'm good. I have to say, can I just say that for a moment? I'm good at manifesting stuff. And so I was provided beautiful housing, gorgeous view, right off of the square, the plaza. And I did a lot of rest and a lot of sleeping, and I watched TV from time to time, and I discovered an amazing event just happened over this week. And the amazing event over this week was that Twitter went public. Thank God. Because, imagine not having public tweets, right? Now, I don't know why it struck me as so odd, but so here's this thing. I don't tweet. Sorry, I'm just not cool. And I'm cool with not being cool. That's the good news. It's an amazing thing, and people do it and whatever, and I understand what it is. In 144 characters, you put your message out to whoever wants to follow you. And so this thing that 6 or 7 years ago did not exist now is this billion-dollar business, and they just made billionaires out of these kids that figured out how to make people be able to talk in 144 characters. So I couldn't help but contrast, like, just coming from the Anasazi and being in awe, and then going, cool, we're rewarding 144 characters. God. I don't know. It just struck me as odd, right? But it's the world that we live in, and again, I have nothing against the world that we live in, but the recognition, I think it's more profound than ever, and what I experienced, again, one of the things that I love about Santa Fe is, it is the oldest capital in the United States, 375 years. So when we were celebrating the birth of a nation, they were like, yeah, we're only 100 years old, right? And what happens in Santa Fe is you have this beautiful mixture of the Spanish, the Hispanic culture, the Native American culture, and the European culture all coming together in this beautiful, stunning environment. And so, again, the illusion is everything's brown, but everything's alive. And so you go into these brown galleries, and then the colors are amazing. And so I got to go pray in the cathedral that's right there in the plaza, which is this amazing building. And I couldn't help, I faked that I was a Catholic. I was like, yeah, it's all right, isn't it, I'm one with all of it. I'm good. You got Dharma beads, I'm there. You got, I'm holy water, yes. Why wouldn't you, right? And as I was just in prayer, I thought, to think that for almost 400 years, people have come into this place to find their connection with something larger. There is that within us that is always seeking to connect with the something larger. As I said, the illusion of the world says it's all about the stuff that happens in the world. But Spirit recognizes that we are truly birthless, deathless, changeless beings, having a myriad of experiences so that the divine can experience itself in new and powerful ways. And when we allow ourselves to let the circumstances, the problems, the situations in our life determine our well-being, we're missing the mark. We're forgetting who we are. So I loved Guy Finley's, if you weren't here this morning, go online. We'll have it up, I guess, in a day or so. It was really quite brilliant. But he was talking about this way of being so that we're at choice. Do we choose to move into the heaven consciousness, the recognition of our oneness with the divine, or do we move into the, as he called it, the dragon consciousness, where we move into the lower realms of being and we're fighting dragons and doing all those sorts of things? You see, this is the choice for us over and over. Can we, no matter what circumstances happening in our life, can we ground ourselves in the awareness and the presence of the divine? To move into a transcendent way of being. So that doesn't deny the things of the world, but it simply doesn't attach to the things of the world. That it's all transitory. It's all changing. And so our work is to keep breathing into what is present now, what is available now. I was struck, I had some time to reflect, and I was struck kind of after our dedication weekend. I needed just a whole week just to process that, right? But I was struck on the moments that change our lives. And they don't usually come with a sign, right? They don't say, "Hi, I'm the moment that's going to change your life. Pay attention." Rather, they sneak up from behind. And it's only after it's already happened that you realize something happened. I was invited to a Center for Spiritual Living, it was called a different name, by a woman that I took a Dale Carnegie course with. And she said, "You ought to go to this church that I go to." Let me just explain, at that point in my life, open and receptive were not words that I used, particularly about church. And I was like, really? But something responded, because I had made a declaration that I had to do my life differently. That was becoming very obvious. I had to do something different. And so I walked in to a community very similar to this, to amazing musicians very similar to ours that were singing completely inappropriate church music. Where were the hymns? Where was the old rugged cross? I didn't know what to do. And I had an experience that I left there feeling better about myself than I went in. A new experience in church for me, I must say. And my life changed because I said yes. And so it was wonderful to have Michael here and to get to tell that story about how a minister walks into a bar and says to a piano player, "Come play at my church." It was a moment that changed his life. And many of you have listened to his CDs and have had your life changed by the experience that you've had of listening to him. And some of you are going to go out of here today and you're going to have a conversation with someone and you're going to tell them some gem of truth that will change their lives. And so when we can step back from our lives and we can move into that larger perspective, then we begin to appreciate that it's all sacred. It's all perfect. It's all beautiful. The light, the dark, the pretty, the ugly, all that stuff's just stuff we call it. But it's all part of a sacred tapestry that we are a part of. And so we get to be at choice of whether we will be conscious and aware. If we will live in that state of being, I call it a state of grace, where we recognize our oneness with the divine and we allow that divine intelligence that has created all to guide and direct and inform our life. And when we can live in that state, we can hardly help but fall to our knees in gratitude. Because Spirit is always giving of itself freely, fully, joyously, lovingly, if we will simply awaken to the what is, then we can create beauty. We can create art. We can have more than enough to be fulfilled in all aspects of our life. So, I came back restored. I realized that there's more to do. One of the great gifts, a friend gave me a book called Quiet. For those of you who are introverts in the book, in the world, I want you to give yourself this gift. It's called Quiet. Being an introvert in a world that will not stop talking. And it reminded me, nothing wrong with being extroverts, but our culture has moved to a place that Tony Robbins is the ideal. Right? And Tony Robbins is amazing. I'll tell you a story about him one of these days. He's amazing at what he does. But we've moved into that place, it's culturally, where we forget the value of stepping back, of withdrawing, of being still, of listening to Spirit. And the truth is, like everything, we're all some of both. And what we always want to do is to work to live in balance and in harmony with the yin and the yang, all of those competing energies, the masculine, the feminine, all of those, our goal is to find balance so that we can walk through this world without being absorbed by the world, that we can have perspective. Now, it may require that you turn off your tweeter machine for a little bit. I know, it's a lot to ask. But I'm just saying, there may be value in finding that place where you find rest and restoration, where you find peace, where you renew your spirit so that we move back into the world and see the beauty that always surrounds us. Let us pray. As we simply take this moment, breathing into this precious moment, this time, this place where we come together in spiritual community to honor and celebrate the divine in ourselves and in each other, to remember that there is but one life, one power, one presence, and that in this presence we each live, move, and have our being. And so we open our hearts wide, our minds to remember, to know that this same divine intelligence that has caused all things to be, that causes the planets to remain in perfect balance and motion, causing the rain to fall, the flowers to grow, and all of life to renew and reveal itself, that this is our life. And just as that divine intelligence seeks to express itself through the seed into that potentiality that is within the seed, so too does this divine intelligence wish to express itself through the God seed that is planted within each one of us. And so in this moment we open our hearts to say yes. I give thanks for this life expressing through me. I give thanks for the abundance that is all around me and expressing itself through me. I give thanks for the wholeness revealing itself as health and well-being and vitality. I give thanks for my greater good that is always making itself known. I choose in this moment to pay attention, to be aware, to honor and acknowledge the sacred that is all around. My heart is restored to peace. My mind becomes calm and still. Joy overflows through me, for I know my right relationship with the divine. How blessed we are. And so from this place of blessing, I simply bless this spiritual community, this divine vision that is pulsating itself through us. I know is divinely inspired, guided, and provided for. We indeed extend a blessing to our brothers and sisters around the planet. For I am knowing that we live in a world that works for everyone. It is a planet at peace. It is a planet experiencing profound joy for the wonder we call life. And as always, we take a moment to bless all priests, rabbis, ministers, teachers of every faith. For we know there are many pathways to the divine. We honor and bless them all and name them good. I invite you in this moment to take a deep breath, to know your oneness with that which has always been and will always be, with that divine intelligence that is seeking its highest self-expression through you. And you say yes to it, even as it says yes to you. It is good. It is so. It is done. As together we say, and so it is.